Now, want to thank everybody for joining today. We know everybody runs pretty busy schedules throughout the day, and we're just grateful that you've made time to join this very important event today, hosted by the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, the Congressional Working Group of that roundtable, which my name is Matias, Perttula, get to serve as the one of the co-chairs of. We do some excellent work on the Hill in a multi-faith fashion, alongside my colleagues and co-chairs, Sue Taylor from the Church of Scientology National Affairs Office and Trent Martin from 21 Wilberforce. We found that, over the years that we worked on international religious freedom issues, and as you will probably hear from most of our presenters today, there are areas around the world where religious freedom is definitely in a growing state, but there are also very troubling areas where religious freedom is in severe decline that need a lot of attention from the United States, from leadership all around the world, and in the US government, from NGO communities and passionate advocates that want to advance this freedom, this fundamental human right and fundamental freedom for all human beings around the world. We are so honored to host all of you today and all of our speakers, and I don't want to take too much time on my own, and I want to jump straight into the program here and introduce Greg Mitchell, who is the co-chair of the the chair of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable. He has been a champion pioneer in this movement, has coalesced and a massive coalition, a global coalition now, from what used to be just a small NGO community just 10 years ago in Washington, D.C., to now a global movement. The Roundtable has become a staple name in D.C. and around the world, and we're all excited to be a part of that, and we want to congratulate Greg on his excellent work. And I want to toss it over to you, sir, for some updates from the Roundtable and what the Roundtable is all about.
Thank you, Matias, and thanks, Sue and Trent, and everybody at the Roundtable and the Congressional Working Group. Just glad to be here with you all and to be here with the speakers, Congressman French Hill, Ambassador Sam Brownback, Dwight, Bashir. It's great to be with you all. I'm here to tell you a little bit about what the International Religious Freedom Roundtable is, and some of the successful outcomes of the work that we do, and then kind of look ahead at hopefully more work with Congress, because it's really good when Congress coordinates actions with civil society, with faith communities and civil society to advance religious freedom around the globe. So real quick, the Roundtable, it's informal. I just wanted to say that too. It works because it's informal. I mean, the purpose is to pull people of all faiths and even people of no faith, the atheists and humanists. So we pull together people of all faiths and people of no faith, and bind them together and get them to stand up for each other, basically, to work together to advance religious freedom for everyone, everywhere. And to borrow the phrase that Ambassador Brownback selected for the upcoming IRF summit in July, that's what we're all about. It's religious freedom for everyone, everywhere, all the time. It's really unique because we pull people together, people who really don't believe or don't agree on much of anything, theologically or politically, but we all come together because we all agree on one thing, and that's the importance of religious freedom for everyone. So that's what it's all about, is pulling people together. And again, the Roundtable is informal. It's not incorporated. It's not an organization. We like to call it an informal group. We even called it a non-group because it's informal. But it's a safe space where we can all get together on a regular basis. We've been doing this for 10 years now. And for a while there, we were meeting every 2 or 3 months. And what happens when we get together is we bring stories of persecution and discrimination to the table. And anybody at the table can bring these stories of persecution and discrimination wherever it's happening in the world. And the reason we bring these stories to the table every time we meet is because the whole purpose is to then take actions together. So this is an action-oriented space, the IRF Roundtable is. So you bring these stories of persecution and discrimination, and then we figure out, can we all pull together and work together in multi-faith fashion to engage the U.S. government and ask the U.S. government to engage whatever foreign government is restricting religious freedom or belief. So we do these multi-faith communications to the U.S. government and urge them to engage, but then we do multi-faith letters and communications directly to these foreign governments who are, again, restricting religious freedom of belief. And we ask them, we basically lay out the situation from our viewpoint. And again, it's a multi-faith viewpoint. And we urge them to make reforms to their laws so that they stop restricting peaceful religious or belief communities. I hope that makes sense, but that's what we do. We get together, share these stories, and then we leap into action. And again, this is a unique space, for a few reasons. I want to give you the keys to success of the Roundtable. First of all, again, it's multi-faith, and we say multi-faith instead of interfaith because it does include atheists and humanists, people who don't, belong to a specific faith. So it's multi-faith. We like to say it's radically inclusive because it's so inclusive. We invite everybody and welcome everybody to the Roundtable. Anybody who's willing to work shoulder to shoulder with everybody else to advance religious freedom for everyone is welcome. So we have big organizations, small organizations, and even individuals, all welcome. And then we operate on an equal citizenship model. I said we're action oriented. Everybody, and when I say equal citizenship, everybody has a seat at this table. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has an equal opportunity to put something on the agenda, bring their stories to the table, design multi-faith initiatives that we then launch. Usually we start those in the form of a sign-on letter, and then invite everybody else to opt in by signing that letter. So it's really special because of those elements there, and it's more inclusive than any group that I've seen or any coalition that I've seen in this religious freedom space. And again, like I said, we usually start with a sign-on letter, and so we lay out the situation and then ask representatives of all faiths and no faith to sign on. And we use that letter to reach out to congressional offices, to reach out to the White House, to the State Department, and then reach out directly to foreign governments as well, and approach them as one multi-faith, really like a multi-faith family. And we ask them to take a look at the situation, which are stories from real people and how like specific policies and actions are restricting the lives of real people. So you bring persecution and genocide stories to the table and discrimination. And then we really engage these governments too. When we reach out to foreign governments, we engage them and really frame it in their self-interest, because our goal is to harness their self-interest and see why it's in their interest to make reforms that respect and advance religious freedom for everyone, everywhere. And then we offer to work with these foreign governments to improve. Like we propose specific reforms, and we offer to work with them to reform their systems. And I'll just give you one example. Kazakhstan is one example. We reached out to the State Department back in 2013 and asked the State Department to engage Kazakhstan because they had a new religion law that they had passed that was very restrictive on religious freedom for non-traditional faiths, and people of no faith in Kazakhstan. We asked the State Department to engage, and they did, as much as they could at the time, but they actually recommended that we reach out directly to Kazakhstan, which we did. And that was one of the first direct engagements we did with foreign governments. And we engaged Kazakhstan and offered to work with them. We made our case and offered to work with them. That was 2013. And it took us 7 years to get to the point where, in coordination with Ambassador Brownback and his team at the State Department IRF office, this was back in 2018, Kazakhstan agreed to establish a working group on religious freedom with the US government. They agreed to develop and then get on a roadmap to reform. And that roadmap to reform includes support for religious freedom roundtables in 9 cities in Kazakhstan. And they're now on their second roadmap to reform. So now they're at the point now where they're ready to reform their religion-related policies in order to improve on religious freedom. And we're going to be working with civil society and with faith communities in Kazakhstan. We're going to be supporting them as much as possible. And again, through these 9 roundtables in Kazakhstan, we'll be working with the government there, like through the religious affairs offices, and we're going to be helping them along the way to improve. And that's just one example. But I want to go back to, one of the practical effects of this work is greater social cohesion. And this is why we want to model and replicate the model we've established here in Washington. And then I'll get back to working more with Congress. But we pull people together. 10 years ago, before the roundtable, there were certain faith communities that were fighting with each other or didn't like each other, didn't understand each other, and didn't want to be in the same room together, even in Washington. Now, after 10 years with the roundtable, and it didn't take 10 years to happen, but 10 years, fast forward to today, the same religious communities that would never want to be in the same room together 10 years ago are now working with each other. So what we've seen with our own eyes is pulling everyone together on a regular basis, and not just, this isn't just about dialogue. Like I said, this is about action-oriented work. The more we get everyone to pull together and work together and stand up for each other, the more we have increased not only mutual respect and understanding, but mutual trust and reliance. And we've even gotten close to the biblical standard of love. You know, we even have people, you know, we're acting like a family now. Like we have these weekly roundtables. That's the one thing I forgot to say. We went from meeting every 2 to 3 months to meeting every Tuesday when Ambassador Brownback took his position at the State Department in 2018. We've been meeting every Tuesday since then. And now we're doing it virtually because of COVID. But before and after each meeting, it's like a family. You know, we've got all these people from different faiths and from around the world talking to each other and getting along and really loving each other and loving the other and standing up for each other. So I just wanted to point out that's the special effect that this roundtable model has. And that's why we want to replicate this model around the world, increase social cohesion while we're engaging foreign governments in multi-faith fashion and getting them to agree to work with us to improve their policies so that we can advance religious freedom for everyone. I have about 1 minute left. I'm going to finish with just an invitation to everybody who's on the call, every congressional office that's represented here. We have this congressional working group led by Matias, Sue, and Trent. We'd love to work more with Congress. We've been working with Congress for the entire 10 years, but it's really effective when we have these multi-faith initiatives come out and when we're engaging the State Department, the White House, and then engaging directly with foreign governments. It's really helpful to have congressional letters as well. If we can get congressional sign-on letters to go along with our multi-faith sign-on letters, that doubles the impact. It really, and that's what we're all about, increasing our long-term impact on religion-related policies around the world. And congressional actions in coordination with multi-faith civil society actions, that's a key to success. So I really look forward to continuing to work with our roundtable, but also Congressman Hill, Ambassador Brownback, even now that he's on the civil society side, USCIRF, and all the congressional offices that are represented here through our congressional working group. So thank you very much, and I'll be open to any questions later on.
Great, thank you, Greg. And if we do get questions from the audience, please feel free to put those in the Q&A box. We'll tackle those later towards the end of the program, but couldn't agree with you more what a vital role U.S. Congress plays in being voice for the voiceless, using their influence to advance religious freedom in countries where individuals are constantly being persecuted because of their religious identity. And that's something we champion. And I will just undergird once again what a beautiful family we have at the roundtable, where we stand up for each other. It really is a multi-faith gathering of advocates and individuals who are passionate about religious freedom for their own faith groups, and we stand together and we celebrate one another and we fight for each other. But I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing Ambassador Sam Brownback, who was the most recent Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. We were under his leadership. The State Department did incredible work in this, launched the Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom, the International Religious Freedom Alliance, among so many other accomplishments. I think my colleagues on the panel will probably agree that the last 3 years under his leadership, IRF experienced what we would call a golden age of getting to, in terms of prominence in the international realm, and as a part of U.S. Foreign policy, core U.S. foreign policy priority. So without further ado, please, Ambassador Brownback, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, Matias. Appreciate that. Thank you, Greg. And you're overly laudatory. I appreciate it. I think you're over the top some, but thanks anyway. And And thanks all the congressional offices for signing in to this. I think this is a really key topic. When I first went into the Senate, I had a person come on board, and while I was in the Senate, I had a full-time staffer that dealt just with religious freedom, international religious freedom issues, because there were so many cases. And this is back in 1997 when I started in the Senate. Well, there are even more now taking place. And that person kept very busy and very effective. They got a number of people out of jail, some of which I still run into in Washington, D.C., that were people that we freed from Chinese prison in some cases, and they're operating and now working on religious freedom issues globally and for other people. So I want to encourage you to really invest staff time and people in this topic. It will yield results. It will break people free. We used to just really celebrate in my senatorial office when we'd get somebody free out of jail, or sometimes you just write to another country about an individual and you keep them alive by virtue of you giving them a name and recognizing that somebody somewhere that has a prominent position is paying attention. You can sometimes keep people alive and get them out of jail. And it's an amazing thing that you have the authority and the capacity to be able to do, and I pray you will, and work with these entities that Greg Mitchell and the Roundtable. There's lots of them are from around the world that are engaged, and that you can leverage your work. Just plug into the Roundtable. You'll hear what's taking place. You'll have constituents come in with a particular issue. You can access then the particular civil society group that works that issue or works that area, and you can work the administration. You can work international bodies on this topic. You can work the UN system. You can work the OSCE system. You can now work, because they're tuning into it. The Organization of American States is now plugging in more what's taking place in religious freedom. And the African Union is starting to plug into this. So we've got now these bodies in this last time while I was at the State Department, that they're starting to figure out, okay, we've got a problem here. We need to deal with it. If you want to address issues of genocide, they're primarily driven, not exclusively, but I would say primarily driven by religious differences. Whether that's the most recent case of the Uyghurs in China, in Western China, the Muslim-based population that the Chinese Communist Party doesn't like, or if it is the Yazidis and the Christians in northern Iraq that was a declared genocide that happened as well, or the Rohingya pushed out of Burma, and the Kachin and Karen as well that have been pushed out of Burma. These are genocides or crimes against humanity that at their root, they have this religious difference. And that's why the mantra that we have and that Greg mentioned about is religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time. This is good for social cohesion, helps people be able to understand that the government will stand for everybody's religious freedom, even if you don't agree with their religious position, as long as you're practicing it peacefully. And we're also seeing major breakthroughs happening with this mantra in the Middle East. You saw in the Abrahamic Accords, peace agreements between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan. Seen Sudan drop its blasphemy laws. First country I've seen in decades that have dropped a blasphemy law, maybe even ever. These things are happening as this global grassroots movement continues to move forward, and as governments recognize the importance that in a global society, you have to accept each other's religious differences. And they should actually even be ones that we should reach out and seek to understand and respect each other more. It's good for economic growth. It's good for security. It's in a country's best interest itself. These are some Sunni nations in the Middle East are saying we can't grow if we kill or we exclude everybody that's not a Sunni Muslim. How are you going to expand a society or have a global reach or be a welcoming country to bring in the intellectual capacity that you need if you disagree on religion, you're gone. and these countries, the leadership, and I've been meeting with a number of them, they recognize this and they're moving to accept this. The United States has to push this and continue to push it. We've got an open door. This is the time. We're the base country that pushes this topic. We're the ones that live it, not perfectly, but we live it well, and we need to push it forward. Two final things I want to point out. Second is our system is being challenged around the world, particularly by China. The authoritarian regimes in the world are saying our systems are equal to democracy. One of their big weaknesses they have is how they view religion. They view religion as something to control. It's the kingdom of man trying to control the kingdom of God. And it's never worked in history. It won't work now. But you're seeing the authoritarians have really been pushing this, particularly the Chinese, but also the Russians. Turkey has been after this a great deal. We've got to push back and show the superiority of an open faith system that has respect for all faiths. And this is one of our key strengths that we have. We accept everybody. If you're peacefully practicing your faith, we accept you. We respect you. As Greg say, I pray we get to the day where we love you, regardless of these differences. Final point is on July 13th to 15th, we'll have the first civil society-led Religious Freedom Summit. It's hosted by the USCIRF Roundtable. That's the kind of the convening, not the convening team, but that's the host, is the Greg Mitchell International Religious Freedom Secretariat. There are 50 now organizations of various faith communities that are conveners that have put the resources together to host this summit. Gail Manchin, up until last week, and when she was confirmed by the Senate, and I are the co-chairs for it. There'll be a new Democrat co-chair will come in. We want you to participate in this. This will be the largest international religious freedom gathering of the year that will take place. It's, like I say, civil society led. We want it to be an annual event. It's the annual kind of convening of the religious freedom community to continue to build this global grassroots movement around religious freedom. It'll be at the Omni Shoreham in DC. And we'll abide by all the COVID restrictions and everything, but plug in online or come in person. I hope you can come in person, because a big part of this is the people to get to know each other so they can work together better on this critically important topic. So I hope you can join us for that event. Matias, thank you. God bless everybody. Appreciate being able to be a part of the program.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and thank you for your work. And the summit is looking up to be a very great, successful event already. We're all looking forward to it and shaping it to be even better. So thank you for your continued work. Next up, I have the honor and the privilege to introduce another excellent organization that's been a champion in the trenches for international religious freedom, and that is none other than the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. And from there, we have Dwight Bashir, who is the Director of Outreach and Policy at USCIRF, to share a little bit of an update. In fact, they just launched their most recent report that we've all been reading with some excitement. So Dwight, over to you.
Thank you, Matias. Very much appreciate that. And I apologize that I'm not Gail Manchin, the chair of USCIRF. She was slated to be here, as Ambassador Brownback just said. She is no longer with the commission because she was confirmed in another position on the Appalachia Regional Commission, from one commission to another, just late last week. So unfortunately, we will miss her greatly. She served for 3 years on the commission and most recently as chair. So I'm going to fill in for her today, just talking a bit about USCIRF and the importance of international religious freedom, piggybacking a bit off of what Ambassador Brownback said. The issue USCIRF, as we call it, has been a key bipartisan component of U.S. foreign policy for more than 2 decades. And those of you working for congressional offices should be proud to know that Congress has often been the driving force behind that. And I recall the days that Ambassador Brownback was in Congress and working these issues hard. And it was in 1998 that Congress passed the International Religious Freedom Act, which created the office at the State Department, the ambassador at large position, and then an advisor position at the National Security Council at the White House, and USCIRF. And so let me just give you a little background on USCIRF, how we're created as a resource for Congress, and then discuss how Congress can continue to lead on IRF issues in ways that impact and help persecuted religious communities all around the world. USCIRF is an independent, bipartisan federal advisory body that monitors religious freedom worldwide, using international standards to assess conditions on the ground, and makes recommendations to the President, Secretary of State, and Congress. And USCIRF has 9 commissioners appointed by the President and the congressional leadership of both political parties, and a professional staff of about 20. USCIRF is separate, of course, from the State Department, but works very closely with the Office of International Religious Freedom and the ambassador at large there. USCIRF commissioners are private citizen volunteers, and they come from different political parties, different faith and professional backgrounds, different parts of the country. Yet they all agree on the importance of freedom of religion or belief for everyone, everywhere, and the need to shine the light on the severe abuses of so many individuals of all faiths and none who suffer for exercising this right, and of course to try to impact U.S. policy in this area. Religious freedom abuses, whether caused by government action or inaction, shouldn't go unchallenged. Research has found, as Ambassador Brownback alluded to, that countries that uphold religious freedom have more vibrant and democratic political institutions, rising economic and social well-being, and diminished tension and violence, and much greater stability. And those that don't, provide fertile ground for poverty, insecurity, war, and terror, and extremist activity. As I mentioned, USCIRF was created by Congress to be a resource for members and their staff. We call out religious freedom violations and make policy recommendations through our statements and op-eds and reports throughout the year, and our annual report, which Matias made reference to. We just released the week before last. We cover about almost 30 countries, typically those at or near a standard, what's called countries of particular concern because of systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations. The report highlights countries where conditions are a serious concern, and a couple of countries were mentioned, but particularly countries like China, Burma, India, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Nigeria, where there's some very severe situations for religious freedom going on. It also includes recommendations on how to promote religious freedom more effectively, along with which countries the State Department, we recommend the State Department should designate as CPCs. And as our report details, US law provides a range of tools to address severe religious freedom violations, including in IRFA, the legislation, and the 2016, the Frank Wolf International Religious Freedom Act, and the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act, another new development that provides tools for targeted sanctions, which has been utilized really significantly in recent years, which is a true testament to seeing this issue get play through our foreign policy. Now, over our 20 years of existence, USCIRF's recommendations have impacted US policy and helped to improve the implementation of IRFA, particularly by ensuring that the worst violators are designated as CPCs. And IRFA requires the President, who delegated this authority to the Secretary of State, to undertake annually a review of every country in the world, whether the country meets this standard. And any country meeting the threshold should be designated as CPC, and the US government's required to take action to encourage improvements. Now, in addition to our annual report and our recommendations, we issue reports on cross-cutting issues throughout the year on topics such as religious intolerance and education materials, blasphemy laws impacting religious freedom, social media and hate speech. We also include periodic country and policy updates, as well as fact sheets to be of use to the public and also the Hill in particular. Now, beyond these resources, we support congressional offices by providing information through staff level briefings, testimony, in hearings, development of legislation, and upon the return of commissioner delegations to different countries, we certainly brief offices. Recently adopted legislation based on USCIRF recommendations and support include the Uyghur Human Rights Act and a resolution calling for the global repeal of blasphemy, heresy, and apostasy laws. And we also have the statutory authority to hold hearings in Congress on a variety of different topics relevant to religious freedom. In fact, next week, On May 12th, we're holding a virtual hearing called Ending Genocide, U.S. Government Genocide Determinations and Next Steps, and we hope you'll all be able to attend that. You can find that on our website at uscirf.gov. And now, in addition, an important way congressional staff can help further religious freedom around the world is by advocating on behalf of a religious prisoner of conscience. In partnership with the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, USCIRF founded the Defending Freedoms Project, or we call it the DFP, to support prisoners of conscience around the world. And the DFP is an official program of Congress that enables members to adopt prisoners of conscience to highlight their unjust imprisonment and the larger human rights abuses occurring in a particular country. I'll just point out that Congressman Hill, who's on the call, he recently did a joint op-ed with one of our commissioners, Jim Carr, and on Egypt and the plight of Coptic Christians. So there can also be joint work with commissioners and members of Congress. So we welcome that and do that periodically. Prisoners of conscience are also individuals imprisoned for the peaceful expression of their political, religious, or otherwise conscientiously held beliefs. Publicly speaking on behalf of a prisoner and sharing the story of their case humanizes the broader religious freedom violations occurring in the country. And advocacy can take the form of a 1-minute floor speech about the prisoner, an op-ed, as I mentioned, in a paper, local newspaper, or a tweet on the anniversary of the prisoner's detention. Foreign governments take notice when a member of Congress speaks out against human rights violations. So advocating for religious prisoner of conscience can result in better treatment for them in prison, allow for visitation from family members and loved ones, and even lead to the release of the prisoner. As Ambassador Brownback said, we see this and get this feedback all the time. This advocacy really does make a difference. And the participation of Republican and Democratic members in the DFP signifies the strong bipartisan commitment our legislative branch has in advancing international religious freedom. This bipartisan consensus in Congress urges the administration to continue to make international religious freedom a priority in foreign policy. And if the DFP is something your boss might be interested in, for those offices, staff members on today, you can find more information about the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission on their website, or by reaching out to the staff of the two co-chairs, Representative Jim McGovern and Chris Smith. Now, protecting freedom of religion and belief is directly aligned with the founding principles of our country and the values, obviously, that the United States embodies as the leader promoting human rights in the world. And as elected officials chosen to represent congressional districts and states with diverse religious communities and ethnic groups, members of Congress are positioned well to advance international religious freedom. They, along with all of you as their staff, have an incredible opportunity to call attention to the oppression and violence and cruelty experienced by these groups at the hands of governments and non-state actors in countries around the world. And we really greatly appreciate your interest in this fundamental right. And all of us speaking today are here to help you and to help your office in any way we can to advance religious freedom through your work. So thank you for the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Dwight. That was excellent. And thank you to the commission and the great work that you do there day in and day out. Definitely having an impact in the advocacy world and everywhere else. And just to reiterate to all the staff members that are on the call today that, we, something I missed in my opening remarks is that we exist here to serve you. We're here to empower you. We're here to give you information, whatever tools you might need to be successful in your role in leading some of these initiatives. Because as Dwight said, when a congressman or a senator or U.S. leader speaks, the world listens, the country listens. There's a lot of weight that goes in those words. So thank you, Dwight. Next up, I want to introduce Dr. Paul Murray, who is the Vice Chair in USCIRF Secretariat and Vice President of Global Peace Foundation. He's going to give us a little bit of an update from his work and as the 4th Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom in Brazil begins to take shape. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Matias. Welcome, everyone. Glad to be able to share a little bit about the Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom. It is an annual 3-day event. It was hosted by the Secretary of State for its inaugural launch, and during its 2nd year. Last year, our 3rd year, it was hosted by the government of Poland. Now, the purpose of the ministerial is to reaffirm international commitments to promote religious freedom for all and to focus on concrete outcomes that produce durable, positive change. There are a broad range of stakeholders who convene to discuss challenges, identify concrete ways to combat religious persecution and discrimination, and ensures greater respect for freedom of religion or belief. The 2019 ministerial was the largest religious freedom event of its kind in the world. We had more than 1,000 civil society and religious leaders and more than 100 foreign delegations who attended, and this marked the first time that a Secretary of State had convened back-to-back ministerials on the same human rights issue. The fourth annual ministerial to advance religious freedom will be held in Brasilia, Brazil. Each year, we are having different countries that are stepping up to host the event. Again, as I said, last year it was in Poland. This coming year, it is to be convened in Brazil by the Brazilian government. It's currently scheduled for the week of November 15th of this year, and we will convene civil society, religious leaders, and government officials to discuss the opportunities and the challenges for promoting and defending religious freedom globally. Through a series of plenary sessions, participants will discuss the necessary building blocks and emerging trends in advancing religious freedom, as well as how religious freedom, international development, and humanitarian aid can all work together to advance these mutual interests. So we're very excited about this launching each year and looking forward to the convening this fall in Brazil. And then in 2021, it will be in the United Kingdom. So wanted to share that with all of you about this annual ministerial. I'm gonna turn it back to you, Matias. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. And he leads off the working group for the International Religious Freedom Roundtable that's helping put together the civil society pieces for these as well. So thank you for your work there, Paul. Now is my great honor to introduce Representative Congressman French Hill from the great state of Arkansas. Thank you for your work. As Dwight said already earlier, with co-authoring the op-ed. That's incredible work. The words, like I said before, they come with a lot of weight when folks overseas read it. Conditions for prisoners become a lot better when U.S. leaders speak on these issues. So I don't want to take too much time. So over to you, sir. Thank you for your work on the Hill.
Well, thanks, Matias. It's great to be with the Roundtable and all of our interested parties today. It was nice to hear from my good friend Sam Brownback for the outstanding leadership that he's delivered in his role as our ambassador for religious freedom. You know, and I think we all share the view that President Reagan had, and it certainly speaks to my heart when I think about the importance of religious freedom and tolerance. President Reagan said, "Respect for human rights is not social work. It's not merely an act of compassion. It's the first obligation of government and the source of its legitimacy." And so, as Sam Brownback said, this is under assault around the world. And so the Roundtable, the work of the Commission, the work of independent and individuals around the country and parliamentarians around the world is so very vital. It is a bedrock of America's foreign policy, and it's important for the Congress to focus on this issue and help guide the administration in areas where it can engage and improve protecting religious freedom around the world. There's been a long bipartisan consensus on this, and we lost one of our great Democrat voices in the last election cycle, Dan Lipinski. He was such a great voice for religious tolerance around the world, and I miss being with Dan. We were last together at an international Catholic legislators meeting in Fatima, Portugal, and Dan always was such a voice of reason. But we've worked behind the scenes over the last few years, and we have a great replacement for Dan in the leadership of the International Religious Freedom Caucus with Republican Gus Bilirakis, who stepped into that important role. I reference this because it's an organized and bipartisan effort on Capitol Hill in Congress to focus on international religious freedom issues and help unify the U.S. government position and messaging on this critical topic. Also want to thank the Roundtable for its leadership in sending a letter to President Biden and outlining your recommendations to the administration on continuing this important work. For members of Congress, having an experienced, well-qualified ambassador at large for international religious freedom in the U.S. State Department is vital to the U.S. government's efforts to monitor religious discrimination around the world and to engage where it's the most significant. And I really treasure the work the last 4 years with Secretary Pompeo and Ambassador Brownback, who really put this at the forefront of America's positioning, and they've been well recognized by all of your comments today for their individual and institutional contributions to this. When I've traveled around the world over the past 4 years, this is a real highlight that other parliamentarians mentioned. Hey, we really appreciate the initiative, the ministerial meeting on religious freedom. It's really been important. It's really helped change attitudes in our country. So that's why I think it's such a critical element. From the attacks in Burma to mass imprisonment and forced labor of the Uyghurs and Chinese Communist Party, to what we dealt with in watching the ISIS genocide against the Yazidis and Christians in Syria and Iraq, the U.S. has been responsible for making a big difference when it comes to that voice. And where we don't engage, it only gets worse. In addition to the issues of genocide and mass oppression, this position of the ambassador at large helps to engage with our allies as well. A topic of particular concern and importance to me that Dwight just mentioned has been the treatment of Coptic Christians in Egypt by their fellow Egyptians and the cultural of impunity that exists in that country. My engagement with the Egyptian government over the years has been nothing but positive, and it's through multifaceted approaches by both the legislative and the executive branches of government that we can show our allies like Egypt that the United States is unified in our conviction on this point, because Egypt is an important ally to us in the peace process ever since Camp David in Israel. And you just heard Sam talk about the importance of the Abraham Accords spreading across the Gulf nations. So Egypt recognizes its important friendship with the United States, but it's also important that we continue to make progress in civil society in Egypt, particularly in the religious tolerance arena. So we've talked about the importance of letters to the administration, and I'm pleased to announce today that a letter is going to President Biden from the following members of Congress on the subject of appointing a new U.S. ambassador for religious freedom. Letter signed by Jim Lankford, myself, Senator Rosen, Senator Blunt, Senator Rubio, Congressman Juan Vargas, Congressman Gus Bilirakis, and Congressman Henry Cuellar. It's a bipartisan, bicameral letter that's being delivered to the White House this week, encouraging President Biden to expeditiously continue America's leadership in the ministerial and religious freedom by appointing an ambassador and by putting his weight behind the importance of this work. It's a treat to be with everybody today. Thank you for inviting me, and look forward to questions if we have some. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman. That's excellent news on the letter. Thank you for leading on it. That's something that's obviously very close to our heart in the NGO community, that we're looking forward to having a new ambassador in that role, vital leadership role. One quick follow-up, if I will, if you would. In addition to the letter, how can other congressional offices, for the staff online right now, support the swift nomination and confirmation of the ambassador at large? Are there other ways that folks can engage in this process?
Well, I would really encourage individual letters. In addition to that letter, I would encourage people reaching out to White House Legislative Affairs. And it's nice to do it by delegation, so members of the House working with their senators can do it. Encourage your faith leaders at home to do that. I think it's very important. Many states have a very vigorous prayer breakfast organization that can be an outlet. You have caucuses for religious freedom in your state legislatures or general assemblies, and that can be an effective way to draft a letter from a governor or for a general assembly or legislature to the White House, just denoting, look, America leads on this issue. It's a fundamental bedrock of our foreign policy. It also helps, I think, cope with the challenges that a lot of countries face now, particularly developed countries. Look at what Pope Francis said before the pandemic. He gave, as he worked, his work mightily on the faith bridging, as you know, with the Muslim community, with his trip to Abu Dhabi, his recent trip to Iraq. The Pope has been very open about red martyrdom. We all know what red martyrdom looks like. It looks like the Yazidis, it looks like the Copts on a Libyan beach, but he also talks about white martyrdom, which is the persecution of people for their religious faith inside a functioning democracy, inside a developed country. And so having this be a fundamental tenet from civil society up to the top of our government at the White House is an important effort. I would encourage all the legislative staff to engage from home all the way up to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's
excellent. Great points. I have one more follow-up question here from the audience, and that goes, actually, I love this question because often at the roundtable, we celebrate the bipartisan nature of international religious freedom. It's one of those issues that no matter what door you walk in through, whether it's an R or a D, most of the time they're going to support the initiative and they want to make some calls or sign on to a letter. But do you see any opportunities for maybe some new opportunities for continued bipartisan consensus and cooperation in advancing international religious freedom as the Congress is involved?
Well, up on Capitol Hill, we've made bipartisan about as hard as you could do. And so my message to those young people who work on Capitol Hill for their boss, this is an important tenet of American foreign policy. And this is a place where you have to go the extra mile. And there are a lot of members on both sides of the aisle, in the Senate and in the House, who happily go the extra mile to make something positive, bipartisan, and unifying, regardless of what's going on out there in the big picture or the noise. And so I would urge staffers to have perseverance and reach across the aisle. This is an area where you can find a lot of unity. One of my most treasured memories of my 6 years of service in the House was several years ago. Now, it was a very difficult trip into Moscow in the height of the conflict in Syria and Ukraine. And I was with my friend Juan Vargas, one of our signers of the letter today. And Juan and I decided we would go to Sunday Mass, and we went to a Catholic church. It was the only Catholic church to remain open during Soviet control of the USSR and Moscow. Why? Because it was located next to the KGB building, and everybody who walked in and out of this little parish church was photographed and observed. And the Sunday that Juan and I walked in there, both of us are relatively tall, 6'2" or so. We walked in there, and everyone in there was a beautiful little Filipino nurse going to Mass there in Moscow. And the church was filled with these beautiful, joyful voices in Mass in Moscow. What more can you say about the power of faith and the power of religious belief? And there, regardless of what Putin's view is or cynical view about using Greek Orthodoxism as a power of the state, set all that issue aside. You had a faith community coming together in a place that was formerly a place of full oppression of religion. And so it was a joyful occasion, and Juan and I referenced that quite a bit. So I say make that extra effort to find that bipartisanship, and this is one of those issues where it should be easy.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. That's a great story, and I think all of us on the panel would agree, the more you try to suppress religious freedom, the more it's just going to start growing and growing, and people are going to want more of it. And don't suppress the freedoms, because people are going to fight to have them. So thank you for your work on the Hill. Thank you for championing the bipartisan nature of this issue, and we look forward to working with you. If you ever need anything, let us know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on into our final portion of the program here, I want to introduce my honored colleague, Sue Taylor from the Church of Scientology, National Affairs Office. She helps lead the Congressional Working Group alongside myself and Trent Martin. So Sue, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Oh, great. Thanks, Matias, very much. And good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to give you like a brief overview of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable's current list of working groups. At this time, there are 14 active ones addressing various issues and country situations around the world. I will put in the chat box a link to this list with their chairs and their co-chairs and contact data so you can easily contact them. These working groups are a tool for all of Congress to use. They will have current data on what is happening in their areas of expertise and will work closely with all of you to help to eliminate global persecution. Now, all of the working groups stress the principles as laid out in Article 18 of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Since the list is long, I will group them into two categories. Each of the working groups monitors their area, gathers factual information, and then goes into action to help address the situations. We have working groups addressing various countries and regions of the world, including Africa, which is now focusing on monitoring Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Brazil, as was just presented by Dr. Murray a few minutes ago, Central Asia, focusing on Kazakhstan at this time, the China Working Group, which has 21 participant organizations, and they are committed to eliminating the atrocities of genocide, violence, and persecution by the Chinese government of the Falun Gong, the Uyghurs, Church of Almighty God, Christians, and other minorities throughout China. And the India Working Group, which is made up of Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and others, seeking to bring about religious freedom, justice, and accountability for all minorities who are persecuted for their faith in India. Then we have the Iran Working Group. We have the Middle East Working Group, which is focusing mostly on Syria and Iraq right now. And we have a South Asia Working Group and a Southeast Asia Working Group. The South Asia Working Group is focusing on several key countries, including Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Pakistan. While the Southeast Asia Working Group covers about 11 countries in Southeast Asia. But this time their focus is on Myanmar and Vietnam. And the remaining 5 working groups include the Congressional Working Group, specifically working with congressional offices on issues of concern and doing briefings such as this one. Excuse me. The United Nations Working Group, bringing violations of religious freedom to the attention of those at the United Nations through meetings and reports. The Prisoners of Conscience Working Group, working with the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, identifying prisoners of conscience and advocating strongly for their release. The Justice and Accountability Working Group, promoting accountability for human rights and religious freedom violations using the Global Magnitsky Act and other tools to bring sanctions upon countries and individuals identified as engaging in human rights abuses or corruption. And lastly, the Domestic Religious Freedom Working Group, keeping an eye on abuses here in the United States. So our working groups are participant created and led, so there may be more created in the future to cover different areas. And each of our working groups will be contacting you in the future, I hope, and we hope that you will be contacting us, because working together, we can certainly be much more effective. Now, before we leave the subject of working group tools, I wanted to ask the third chair of our Congressional Working Group, Trent Martin, from 21 Wilberforce, to tell you briefly about a great resource tool called the Congressional Scorecard. Trent, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sue. And thank you to everyone who's been able to join us today. It's a pleasure to see so many great champions of international religious freedom coming to speak on this issue and taking really the mantle of leadership here on the Hill. So thank you for everyone who's joined us today. Our 21 Wilberforce team has developed an incredible resource that's, in addition to some of the amazing tools that have already been highlighted, we hope you'll be able to utilize in your work for international religious freedom as staffers and as civil society members. We've just released the 116th scorecard for the 116th Congress, evaluating who the different issues and champions of international religious freedom and the freedom to believe on the Hill right now. our team has gone through every single piece of legislation, of international religious freedom legislation, including 37 Senate bills and 24 House bills. That has evaluated what issues Congress is addressing, what regions have been focused on, what areas we can potentially encourage Congress to take even bolder action in support of this fundamental freedom. It also highlights key top congressional leaders who scored an A on this issue, and it's really and that list is always very encouraging because as many of the speakers have already noted, this is a highly bipartisan issue, and this data really does confirm that indeed the notable leaders are on both sides of the aisle in very strong numbers. So we hope that this is a helpful resource for you in your work, and I will drop the link in the chat if you'd like to explore that tool more. Over to you, Matias.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Sue, did you have anything else to add?
No, I just really wanted to thank Trent for bringing us up to date on that. And then I do want to encourage everybody to go to the irfroundtable.org website. And there's a page there on just the working groups. It will explain all the different working groups and their contact information as a resource. So thanks, Matias.
Thanks so much. Today has been great, and I hope all the audience has really enjoyed this and found it useful, a good use of their time. And I know we're running up against the hour like we always do. There's never enough time, but maybe we can take just a few more minutes, and I want to kind of open it up to all the speakers on the panel here. And since we're briefing congressional staff here mostly, and we've mentioned a lot of ways that they can get involved, from joining the IRF caucus, from leading letters, resolutions, doing bills, public statements. Maybe there's something else that has not been mentioned today that we could offer up as a tool of engagement on this issue. If anybody wants to speak up on that, I would love to just entertain that for a few more minutes. Sue, you had your hand up?
Yes, just really briefly. I don't think it was mentioned that everybody, all the congressional offices are invited to join us. Us meaning the IRF Roundtable every Tuesday at 11 a.m. in the morning for that hour. And if you're interested in joining us, again, go to the irfroundtable.org website and you can sign up there for the emails. And then when you get the emails, there'll be a link there that you can join in. We'd love to have you. And it's a great way every week to stay on top of what's happening around the world.
Question stands. I don't know if Greg had anything else to say. Don't mean to put you on the spot too much, or Paul. I don't know if there's any other wisdom that we want to shed to some staffers from here.
Hey, thanks, Matias, and thanks everybody. I think this has been great hour, great briefing event. Yeah, I just wanted to say, as you know, I'm a former chief of staff too on the Hill on the House side. And it's just great. It's much better, as we've discussed here, as everyone has said. It's much better when Congress is coordinating with civil society and with all these faith communities and belief communities and civil society organizations. And we've been, like I said, the Roundtable's been doing this for 10 years, and it's always we go up to. I mean, we work in partnership with USCIRF to a great degree. I mean, it's an informal partnership, but it's still a strategic partnership. We share information, and USCIRF participates in our weekly roundtables. And then when we go up and connect with congressional offices and ask them to engage, a lot of times they check with USCIRF and make sure that what we're asking them to do sounds good to USCIRF, sounds right, and usually it does, because we always, we've got our finger on the pulse. We've got colleagues from around the world that are bringing accurate stories. The same people that are, giving information to USCIRF and the State Department for their annual reports are the people bringing these stories to us. So again, it's much better when we're all communicating, and the more communication there, the better, between the Roundtable, USCIRF, Congress, the State Department, and we're backing each other up. And again, we start all of our initiatives with these multi-faith letters. And you heard Congressman French Hill talking about a congressional letter that they're doing that's a congressional counterpart to what we did as a civil society, roundtable. And these things really work, and they really amplify each other. And this is how we can increase the long-term effect, the long-term impact we're all seeking to achieve here. Because we really want to see the level of restrictions on religious freedom or belief come down. they've been going up for far too long. We want to reverse that trend and start bringing them down. So again, I just urge all of you to do what Sue did. Log in, start participating, and listen. Start by listening, at these weekly roundtables every Tuesday, but participate as much as you can. If your boss wants to give updates and wants to get involved and give updates, that's welcome. It's more than welcome. In fact, it's needed, and it will increase all of our success. I just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. That's great. And I think people always like to say the U.S. should always lead with its values, and I think that leading with this value is certainly worth the fight. And it's a good value to lead on around the world when we conduct relationships with other countries around the world. But with that, we are over the hour. Unless there's any final comments from panelists, we'll go ahead and close it off there. We are, of course, always available on email, so feel free to reach out. If there's an issue or case that comes up across your desk, we'll be more than happy to provide any information that we have. But with that, I want to thank you, the audience. Thank you again to the speakers. Really appreciate all the input and all the great work you're doing. And have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.